Joining us now to talk us through what deeper collaboration with Brazil looks like on the ground is the chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency, Karabo Mohale, as well as one of the agricultural summer camp candidates, Ramatolo Tlotleng. Thank you both for joining us. Karabo, allow me to start off with you. Let's talk about South Africa's trade and business relations with BRICS and how the NYDA factors into all of that.
Good afternoon to you, Hugo, and of course to your viewers at home. What we have realized as South African youth is that, there's not a lot of footprint in terms of participation of young people in trade on an international scale. And what we have done is that we've identified critical areas in which young people can be able to tap into. And one of those critical areas has been the agricultural sector. It is not only labor intensive, but also it is very highly, advanced in terms of technology, as well as having the ability to have cross-border trade, not only on the African continent, but as well as with BRICS countries. And of course, South Africa being the chair of BRICS, this year we had been having a heavy focus on BRICS countries and us ensuring that we strengthen the relationship that South African youths have, not only with those in Brazil, but as well as all other BRICS bloc countries. So one of the programs that we have initiated, as you would have mentioned, is the agricultural summer school that was hosted by the University of Sao Paulo all the way in Brazil. The program was initiated last year where we took 4 young people who are in the agricultural sector to go and learn on advanced technologies and innovation in Brazil. You would know that Brazil in the BRICS bloc is actually quite advanced in terms of agri-tech and agri-economics. So what we do is that we take these young people to go and learn in Brazil, but more so for us is that when they do come back into South Africa, we want them to be able to pay it forward in terms of the skills and expertise that they would have learned in a different country.
Well, I know Ramatolo has recently returned from Brazil, but I'm going to come to you in a moment, Ram. Karabo, I just want to focus on 2 things. One of those things is that you're a young woman. This is Women's Month. Now, as young people, do you have a seat at the table of BRICS?
Well, that is exactly what we're fighting for. And it's not just BRICS alone, but generally multilateral platforms. Our vision is that there should be an institutionalization of the participation of young people in all multilateral platforms, whether they are set aside in terms of that participation. So when you go into the BRICS summit, we must be able to account that 10% of the delegation that is there is young people. And the reason why we're saying this, and sometimes we have short-sighted conversations, our argument is always that young people will not always be young forever. Tomorrow they are going to be in senior positions in government. Now, if you don't have succession in terms of policy formulation, you're going to have a problem that when we enter into the space not understanding what BRICS is all about, we will not have a problem discarding BRICS ideals or any other ideals or policy formulations that you put on the table. So it is important for us that as and when we have this conversation, we strengthen and we edge the participation of young people in multilateral platforms, but also the ideals of intergenerational co-leadership and governance, so that young people can be able to carry these ideals in the work that they do, understanding that in the next 3 years, for example, Karabo will no longer be under the age of 35. But she must be able to say, as we go into the future, these are the fundamental principles that have actually etched the economy of South Africa, and we want to be able to ensure that young people understand why BRICS as a multilateral platform is very crucial, not only to them today, but also for the future of South Africa.
Now, Ram, you've just returned from the South Africa-Brazilian summer school. Talk to us about what you hoped to get out of the summer school, and certainly how much of an eye-opener it was.
Good afternoon, Hugo, and thank you for hosting us. Greetings to the listeners at home as well. So, Hugo, Brazil has quite fascinating agricultural activities that they have there. And I must say that what I had hoped for was far exceeded by what I got. One of the things that one had learned in Brazil is that agriculture definitely is the solution to humanity's problems that we are going to face in the near future. And they are definitely coming up with progressive solutions for the agricultural situation that we see. So part of the things that we learned and got to interact with in Brazil is how they were able to remodel the seed that they produce to make maize. So as you would know, that is a tropical region, and so it means if it's a tropical region, there's rainfall throughout the year. And the seed that has been there in the past has now remodeled itself. Now the seed that they have engineered now is able to maintain and keep into the situation that they have in Brazil. That's part one. The second other thing is that, as you would know, that Brazil is very high in producing cotton, soybean, and the meat export, which is cattle. And they are quite coming up with a very interesting cattle breed that they are producing in Brazil. And they are really closing the gap in as far as the meat production is concerned in Brazil. So those are the things that I think they anchored my experience in Brazil.
When you talk farming or agriculture, you generally don't expect to be talking to young people such as yourself. But I know you've gone to Sao Paulo, you've come back with this information, and off air we're talking about this incredible programs that you've got, courtesy of your NPO. Walk us through that and how some of your learnings from Brazil will be implemented.
So I run an NPO, which is called Kupanda Mbengu. It's quite a small-scale type of NPO, which is really a backyard farming initiative, which is sole purpose is to curb the scourge of poverty and us having to ensure that we feed a lot of people that we have in our communities. So what this NPO does is that we go to a household, we request small portion of space where we are able to plant crops for you, whether it's onion, cabbage, tomato, and so forth, and we plant that for you. So it is the person's responsibility to ensure that they look after the produce that we've made for them. And what we do is just to monitor the progress that we would have made for that person. And it is gaining quite a lot of interest, especially from the community, because you would appreciate that the phenomenon of poverty in our South African communities is quite rife. And it is quite a critical intervention that we are making with the backyard farming system that we've employed. So with the Brazilian setup that we've picked up, that we think we can be able to emulate in our communities, is that there is a farming system which they use. They use biodegradable energy sources for them to reproduce the minerals that we have. As you would know, that not all soil in all the backyards that we would have would be fertile for us to have progressive produce. So biodegradable energy is something that we have to look into and to ensure that we increase the production in our backyard farming systems.
Now, Karabo, this relationship with Brazil is a fraction of the relationship that you could have with the rest of the BRICS countries. Does that offer you an opportunity to reach out to other members of BRICS? And the fact that we've got over 50 heads of state that are going to be attending BRICS summit, which occurs in the next couple of days. Is this a ripe opportunity for you to extend those relationships?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no better time like the present, especially to ensure that we locate young people at the center of the development trajectory in South Africa. But we really just must add that, I mean, the relationship that we have is not only with Brazil. We also have a relationship with China, with India, with Russia as well. What we are in the process of doing is developing such programs that we have with different BRIC member state countries to ensure that the work that we do actually does not only remain in Brazil. I mean, you would know that China is actually leading in terms of tech holistically. So we want to be able to also develop programs in technology to be able to have that interchange between young people in South Africa as well as China. But I think having heads of state all the way, from different countries, but also as well as the African continent being in South Africa is really an opportune moment for young people to be able to echo whatever sentiments it is that they feel need to be considered on the BRICS table and ensure that we hold government accountable towards ensuring that the integration of young people is realized but also institutionalized.
Now, Ram, let's go back to your program. And obviously, it's something that you're doing aggressively, going out into a number of townships to speak to people. But you've also been in conversations with Ekurhuleni city. Now, talk to us about those conversations and certainly what you can talk to us about that regarding your intentions and just the reception that you've received.
We've had quite progressive conversation with the city of Ekurhuleni. And I could say that our discussions are quite at an advanced stage. Because as you would know, we were somehow able to lobby the current administration of the city. As you would know, in the State of the City address, the current mayor of Ekurhuleni made a pronouncement of a program which was called Fetsatlala. Now that project is similar to the project that we are running. So in conversation with some of the city's officials, is that part of the things that they would assist us with is to zoom into the project that we are currently running and somewhat use it as a pilot project into the bigger project that the city would love to run. So the idea is that it will take a turn of some sort of a cooperative using the idea of the NPO that we run. So the cooperative would be that we find land and we find young people together with a mixture of all people that are into agriculture and apportion them some piece of land in a cooperative type of a setup, and they would produce the crops that they would produce there. So that's the type of discussions that we're having.
Karabo, I want to come back to the National Youth Development Agency and certainly your role and function, and if you're satisfied that you've done enough for young people in South Africa. And I ask this on the back of over 60% of young people being unemployed. And whilst the South Africa-Brazil Summer School is a great initiative, it's only 4 people out of multiple millions of young people that would like to get involved.
It's always a difficult question to answer because I need to evaluate my own performance, But I really do think that the NYDA, given the constraints that it has in terms of budget, it has done a lot. But also what we do is that we look at 2 areas. Number one, when you look at our key performance indicators, and of course the AG's report, they would advise that we're doing fairly well. And I must also say that the NYDA has received its 9th consecutive clean audit. That does speak to the basic fundamentals of governance within the institution holistically, but also us ensuring that we keep to the mandate and we deliver on all the targets that we have set. But of course there's an honest conversation that we need to have in South Africa, that you've got an unemployment rate of around 60%, that you have close to 2/3 of young people in South Africa idling in the street. Now, the conversation must not be limited to the NYD alone. Our argument is always that young people are also citizens of South Africa and therefore cannot be confined to only receiving services from the National Youth Development Agency. So we need a whole of society approach. We need civil society to come on board. We need the private sector to come on board. We need to be able to say we've got a crisis of unemployment in South Africa. What are the interventions that we can be able to put in place? And I like, what Rama was speaking about, subsistence farming. I mean, when you speak about food insecurity, it's mainly young people who are mostly impacted and affected. And such an initiative coming from young people actually says that young people do not have a problem of ingenuity. They do not have a problem of actually wanting to participate. The challenge that they might have is that there are limited opportunities, but also the funding pool is also not large enough to cater for all young South Africans.
Ram, you've got 30 seconds to give a word to those young people that are out in the townships. They can look forward to you coming in the not-too-distant future to speak to them about your project.
We are saying that the time is now for young people to really take up this moment, to really venture into agriculture, because that's the future of survival of the world. And young people must open themselves up, because wanting to work in an office, wanting to have a fancy job is not so longer a nice thing. So the fancy job is in the hands. We must muddy our hands so that we can have fresh and progressive produce. Thanks.
Muddy your hands, that's the underlying statement. We'll appreciate the both of you coming on to the show today. National Youth Development Agency Chairperson Karabo Mohale, as well as one of the Agriculture Summer Camp candidates, Ramatolo Tlotleng. Appreciate you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.